Warthog is usually remembered as a brutal, close air support aircraft, built for low-altitude attacks over land, and for ripping apart armored columns with its legendary 30mm cannon. But in one of the most overlooked roles of its long career, the Warthog has also spent years preparing for a very different battlefield. And now, that mission matters more than ever, as tensions in the Persian Gulf rise and the Strait of Hormuz becomes one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth. The A-10 is emerging as a surprisingly relevant weapon once again. Not because it is stealthy, not because it is modern, but because it is exceptionally good at hunting exactly the kind of targets Iran relies on most. Small, fast, hard-to-track attack boats operating in swarms. That is what makes this story so important. Because if the United States is serious about keeping the Strait of Hormuz open, protecting commercial shipping, and preventing Iran from turning the region into a maritime kill zone, then the A-10 may be one of the most practical tools available. And that sounds strange at first. After all, this is an aircraft many consider outdated. The Air Force has wanted to retire it for years. Critics have argued that the Warthog belongs to another era. Too slow, too vulnerable, too specialized for the modern battlefield. But war has a way of reviving old tools when their particular strengths become suddenly useful again. And in the confined, tense, highly dangerous waters around Iran, the A-10 strengths are difficult to ignore. Because the threat here is not just big warships. The real danger often comes from much smaller platforms. Iran's maritime doctrine has long leaned on asymmetry. Rather than matching the US Navy ship for ship, Tehran built a force designed to harass, overwhelm, and intimidate stronger opponents using speed, numbers, and geography. That means fleets of fast attack craft, armed boats, missile boats, mine-laying vessels, and now increasingly explosive drone boats and one-way maritime threats. These are not symbolic assets. They are a serious operational challenge. In narrow waters like the Strait of Hormuz, a swarm of small boats can appear quickly, strike from multiple angles, and disappear just as fast. They can launch rockets, anti-ship missiles, machine gun fire, or simply force larger ships into defensive reactions that disrupt normal traffic. In a crisis, they can also help lay naval mines, one of the simplest and most dangerous ways to shut down maritime commerce. And the Strait of Hormuz is exactly the kind of place where that threat becomes magnified. For decades, Warthog pilots have trained for the possibility of striking small maritime targets, especially Iranian fast boats. This is not some improvised mission invented overnight. It is a long-established but often underappreciated role. The aircraft's ability to loiter, visually identify targets, react quickly, and deliver precise firepower makes it unusually well-suited for maritime interdiction in cluttered coastal environments. And the logic is simple. If hostile boats are moving to attack ships, lay mines, or harass traffic, the A-10 can hunt them. If mine countermeasure vessels are working in exposed waters, the A-10 can protect them. If Iranian drone boats or fast attack craft begin operating in packs, the A-10 can strike multiple targets in rapid succession. That is why the aircraft still matters. The Warthog was never built for elegant air warfare. It was built to stay over the battlefield, absorb punishment, and destroy targets that are dangerous, mobile, and often difficult to kill quickly. Those traits translate surprisingly well to the maritime domain, especially when the enemy is not a blue water navy, but an irregular swarm force operating close to shore. And that is exactly how Iran fights at sea. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has spent years investing in fleets of small craft. Some are armed with machine guns or rockets. Others carry anti-ship missiles. Some can deploy mines. And in recent years, the threat has expanded further with the growing use of uncrewed explosive boats, a category of weapon that Iran and its regional partners helped pioneer well before subsystems became globally famous in other conflicts. This matters because small boats are hard to deal with. A destroyer can destroy one. A helicopter can track one. Drones can monitor them. But when dozens of them are moving in a crowded, narrow maritime battle space, the problem becomes far more complex. Even powerful warships can be stressed by saturation. Defensive systems can be overwhelmed. Commanders can be forced into split-second decisions, and civilian shipping mixed into the same area makes identification even more difficult. The A-10 helps solve part of that problem. It can stay overhead for long periods, it can search visually, it can react faster than many larger assets tied to more rigid tasking, and it can deliver a wide range of weapons against small, moving maritime targets. Its 30mm GAU 8A cannon remains one of the most recognizable guns in military aviation. And against lightly built boats, it is devastating. But that is only part of the picture. The A-10 can also carry AGM-65 Maverick missiles, laser-guided APKWS rockets, and other precision-guided munitions that make it even more flexible in this environment. Those weapons allow the aircraft to engage multiple boats, strike targets with greater standoff, and remain effective even when the battle space becomes chaotic. And this is where the Warthog's so-called obsolescence becomes almost ironic, because many of the criticisms aimed at the A-10 assume that every aircraft must survive the opening days of a high-end war against a peer adversary. That is a useful standard in some contexts, but it is not the only context that matters. Not every mission requires stealth. Not every engagement happens deep inside an integrated air defense network. And not every battlefield punishes slow, rugged aircraft in the same way. Around the Strait of Hormuz, the problem is not necessarily how to penetrate hundreds of miles into hostile territory on day one. The problem may instead be how to maintain presence, protect ships, stop swarms, and rapidly interdict maritime threats before they close in. That is a different mission set. And for that mission set, the A-10 still has real value. This becomes even clearer when you look at the kind of ships the US and its partners would need to protect in a crisis. Mine countermeasure platforms, especially those working to clear or prevent minefields, would be among the most exposed assets in the region. Their work forces them into dangerous waters. Their movements can be predictable. Their mission is slow, methodical, and vulnerable by nature. If Iran wanted to shut down maritime traffic, these ships would become prime targets. So protecting them is essential, and the A-10 is unusually suited for that kind of overwatch. It can orbit above vulnerable vessels, monitor approaching traffic, and attack hostile boats before they get into effective range. That kind of airborne shield may not sound glamorous, but in a real conflict, it could be decisive. Mine hunters cannot do their job if they are constantly under threat from fast-moving swarms or one-way drone attacks. They need breathing room. This is also why exercises pairing A-10s with literal and mine-focused naval assets make more sense than they first appear. At a glance, an old close support jet and a literal combat ship seem like an odd combination, but operationally, the pairing is logical. The ship handles the maritime mission close to the surface. The A-10 provides rapid response firepower from above. One clears, detects, or defends. The other kills what gets too close. Together, they complicate Iran's preferred style of naval harassment. And there is another layer here that makes the Warthog even more relevant in its final years of service. The aircraft has been gaining additional capabilities that expand its usefulness beyond traditional attack runs. Laser-guided APKWS rockets, for example, offer a cheaper and more numerous way to engage smaller targets, including drones and boats. That matters in a region where threats may come in waves, and where using expensive missiles against every small contact is not always sustainable. Link 16 connectivity also improves situational awareness and target sharing, allowing the A-10 to operate more effectively as part of a larger networked force. So even as the aircraft nears retirement, it is not simply fading away. In some respects, it is becoming more adaptable right at the end. And that says something important about modern warfare. Sometimes the most useful platform is not the newest. It is the one whose strengths happen to align perfectly with the problem in front of you. In the Strait of Hormuz, that problem is speed, clutter, geography, and asymmetry. Iran does not need to sink an entire fleet to create a crisis. It only needs to make shipping dangerous enough, uncertain enough, and costly enough that traffic slows, reroutes, or stops. Mines, missile boats, drone boats, and swarming tactics all serve that objective. They are tools of disruption, tools of pressure, tools of strategic blackmail, and stopping them requires persistent, flexible, relatively low-cost force. That is where the A-10 earns its keep. The aircraft can patrol, it can intimidate, it can strike, it can protect exposed ships, it can break up swarms before they reach their targets. And in an environment where the threat can emerge suddenly and at close range, those qualities matter far more than prestige, which brings us to the larger irony of the whole story. For years, the A-10 has been treated as a symbol of the past, beloved by pilots and ground troops, but increasingly dismissed by planners focused on the next generation of warfare. Yet here it is again, still relevant, still useful, and perhaps uniquely suited for one of the most dangerous flashpoints in the world, not because it can do everything, but because it can do this. It can watch the water, it can hunt the boats, and if the Strait of Hormuz becomes the center of a new maritime confrontation, the old Warthog may once again prove that there are some missions it was always built to handle, even if most people forgot. In the end, the pairing of A-10 Warthogs and the waters off Iran is not strange at all. It is a response shaped by necessity, a rugged attack jet built for punishing small, exposed targets, a narrow maritime chokepoint filled with fast attack craft, mines, and drone threats, a battle space where persistence and precision matter as much as speed and stealth. That is why the A-10 is still here, and that is why in the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian boats may have more to fear from a decades-old attack jet than from almost anything else in the sky.